Episode 17 Find Her. Ugh! The sudden, intense pain caused Bryce's handsome face to twist slightly. Natalie sucked in a breath of cold air and pushed. This time, she easily got away. "Sorry, Bryce." With these words, she ran away. About 10 seconds later, after he had finally recovered from the pain, Bryce sat up on the bed. His dark eyes were now frighteningly black. That damned woman. He must catch her and make her pay for what she'd done. He squinted his eyes, thinking. If he was not mistaken, she was wearing the uniform of a hotel attendant. With this in mind, he got up, walked to the door, and opened it. The moment the bodyguards outside saw him, they lowered their heads respectfully. "Mr. Clare, did you see the woman who just ran out?" The bodyguards looked at each other and replied in unison, "Yes, very good." He narrowed his eyes and said fiercely, "Go and get her for me." Natalie ran out of the room and down the stairs. But after descending a few floors, she couldn't run anymore and had to stop. It should be safe now, right? She raised her head and looked up the stairs. Thinking about what had just happened left her with a lingering fear. She had kicked him. Oh, he must seriously hate her. She only hoped she would never see him again. After taking a few deep breaths and calming herself down, she walked out of the stairwell. Suddenly, she bumped into Susan, who had been showing her around the hotel. When the girl saw her, she frowned and asked with some displeasure, "Why were you in the bathroom so long?" Natalie's gaze drifted away for a moment, and then she smiled bashfully. "This hotel is so big, I got lost. I've been looking for a long time, but I couldn't find you. I'm really sorry." Seeing that her apology was sincere, Susan said cautiously, "It's best if you don't wander around. If you offend an important guest, that would be bad, especially the guests in the presidential suite. Even the manager has to be careful when he sees them." The corner of Natalie's mouth twitched. Susan's advice had come too late. "Let's go. I'll help you learn your way around the hotel so you won't get lost again," she said kindly. At this, Natalie came to her senses and responded with a small smile. She turned around and looked in the direction of the staircase with a serious expression on her elegant face. Although she hadn't found Liam this time, she had angered Bryce. But it didn't matter. At least she had managed to get a hint of where Liam might be held captive. Tomorrow, when she came back to work, she would find a chance to go up there. She would do everything she could to get him back. Susan walked for a while and then realized that Natalie was not following her. She turned around, and seeing that she was still standing there, she shouted, "Natalie, what are you doing?" Natalie pulled herself from her thoughts and ran to catch up with her. Bryce's bodyguards quickly discovered Natalie's identity. "Mr. Clare, that woman is a new employee at the hotel." New employee? He frowned. Had he really misunderstood her intentions? At that moment, the sound of something falling came from the room next door, interrupting his thoughts. He had always been a quiet man, and he didn't like noise. But the racket from the next room didn't sound like it was going to end. Ugh, how irritating. Bryce squinted in annoyance, then said in a deep voice, "Go see what's going on." "Yes." The bodyguards left hurriedly. He went to the next room and knocked loudly on the door. After a while, the door opened just enough for the man inside to stick his head out. He looked at the bodyguard, then asked, "What's the matter?" At that moment, there was the sound of something falling again. The bodyguard frowned and said sternly, "What's going on in your room? Can't you be quiet? You've already irritated the people next door, causing a ruckus." The man smiled awkwardly. "Sorry, it's a child making a fuss. Don't worry, I'll calm him down soon." "Well, hurry up." With that, the bodyguard turned around and was about to leave when a childish voice came from inside the room. "Let me out, you meanies! I hope my dad teaches you guys a lesson. My dad is awesome." The people next door were still being noisy, and Bryce was very impatient. So eventually, he came out personally to see what was going on. When he got to the door, he heard a child's voice. Why did it sound so familiar? He quickly walked over to his bodyguards, and they respectfully lowered their heads. "Mr. Clare, what's going on?" "A child is throwing a tantrum." Bryce knocked on the door, and when the man opened it again, he said, "Who's in there?" Everyone in the room could feel Bryce's domineering aura. Frightened, the man threw out an, "It has nothing to do with you," and rushed to close the door. This filled Bryce with rage, and he raised his long leg and kicked the door open. The man was caught off guard and retreated a few steps. Another man in the room immediately rushed over. Seeing that he was about to hit their boss, Bryce's bodyguards quickly went up to him and blocked his path. The two sides stared at each other. The atmosphere was tense. "Why'd you do that? What do you want?" shouted the first man angrily. Bryce didn't even look at him as he walked into the room and scanned it with a cold gaze. Everything inside was smashed and scattered all over the floor. He raised his eyebrows and thought, what kind of child would do this? Then he saw a small figure standing on the sofa. Recognition danced in Bryce's eyes. He wanted to turn around and leave, but as soon as the child saw him, his clear eyes lit up and he cried out in joy, "Daddy!" Bryce knew there was no escape. Liam jumped off the sofa and ran toward him. He grabbed Bryce's leg, raised his cute, innocent face, and looked at him with bright eyes. "Dad, you're here to save me, right?" Bryce raised his hand and rubbed his throbbing forehead. The child's mother had just left, and now he had run into the child again. Was this a coincidence or bad luck? When he didn't say anything, Liam tilted his head in confusion. "Dad, what's wrong?" Bryce looked at him. Unlike his mother, this child was rather pleasing to look at. And he turned around and looked at the two men who were being blocked by his bodyguards, and his gaze darkened. That woman had said that Liam had been locked up, and it seemed that this was true. He didn't know why, but he felt displeased when he thought about Liam, who was so young, being locked up in here. So he bent over and picked the boy up. "Liam, tell me, what's going on?"